Imagine a world where you are just incredibly successful at what you do.
Right.
Like you are making a fantastic living, you are deeply fulfilled, and you have this massive, fiercely dedicated audience that just hangs on your every word.
Sounds like the dream.
It is. But here is the catch. Nobody outside of your specific, dedicated community even knows your name.
Yeah, that's the part that really trips people up.
Exactly. Like, there are no massive industry awards on your shelf. You have never been on a mainstream chart. You are, for all intents and purposes, a complete unknown to the general public.
But you have pure, sustainable, creative freedom.
Yes, and that tension right there is exactly why we are here today. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore this death of the Billboard charts manifesto.
Which is such a powerful concept.
It really is. We are pulling from this fascinating stack of sources today. Primarily, it's these transcripts from a really raw, behind-the-scenes radio interview with Kevin McCove.
Right, the musician, producer, and educator.
Exactly. And he's really out there on the front lines seeing how AI and these new digital tools are sparking a brand new renaissance for creatives.
And I should say the original source material we're looking at is, well, it's sprawling. It's incredibly rich.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. It's a wide-ranging conversation, touching on everything from middle school education reform to music industry analytics and even the personal, ethical struggles of adapting to new technology.
Yeah, the personal side of it is fascinating.
So my goal today is to kind of synthesize all that raw audio data. I want to connect the dots and explain the why behind it all. Why does this shift from mainstream fame to hyper-niche community matter so fundamentally for the future of creative work?
And look, whether you are an independent artist, a creator, an entrepreneur, or just someone who is fascinated by how technology is rapidly rewiring our society, there is something in this for you.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a completely redefined vision of what success actually looks like today. In fact, there's this quote from the source that just hit me perfectly.
The Grammy quote.
Yes. Kevin has this provocative quote that I think is going to be the thesis for this whole discussion. He basically says, "I don't need a Grammy. I don't need to be charting on Billboard."
Right.
Instead, he explains that success today is about having 1 million fans in just like a tiny little silo.
A tiny little silo. I love that imagery.
Right, because it feels so empowering. If you're an independent or local artist trying to make a living, you really need to hear this vision of the future.
It challenges everything we are taught about achievement. We were so conditioned to associate success with widespread household name fame.
Yeah, totally.
But Kevin argues that people usually only aspire to win a Grammy or chart on Billboard because that is what the industry has shown them to aspire to.
Like it's an inherited goal.
Exactly. They aren't your personal goals. You won a Grammy because you saw Michael Jackson win a Grammy, and the industry said, this is what making it looks like.
Right, you just assume that's the top of the mountain.
But the psychology behind that is totally shifting. The younger generation, the kids coming up today, they inherently understand that this old paradigm is broken.
Or at least entirely unnecessary for them.
Yeah, they do not care about monolithic institutional approval. They don't need the gatekeepers to tell them they made it.
Because they're seeing the alternatives play out in real time. I mean, the sources point out that there are bands right now with massive TikTok followings, right?
Huge followings.
Or they have these massive streaming numbers, and they are making a phenomenal living, but the general public will never, ever hear of them.
Nope. They aren't going to be on late-night television.
They aren't in mainstream magazines. Because the math of a creative career has just fundamentally changed.
The world is huge. You've got billions of people coming online in places like Africa and South America. The audience is out there, and they're fragmented into thousands of different subcultures.
You don't have to water yourself down.
Exactly. You no longer need to appeal to the lowest common denominator to reach a mass audience. You can just be hyper-specific to your silo.
It really makes you look at your own career path differently. I mean, think about your own job for a second. How much of your professional ambition is based on a Billboard chart equivalent in your industry?
That is a great question to ask yourself.
Right. Are you chasing a specific title or promotion just because it is the default path everyone else is on? What would happen if you focus entirely on finding your specific silo instead?
It's a massive mindset shift for professionals. But it brings up this really crucial question about the next generation.
Right, the kids.
Yeah. If they aren't aiming for the Billboard charts and they don't care about the traditional gatekeepers, how are they actually building these silos from the ground up?
I am so glad you brought that up because the sources detail an incredible real-world test of this very concept. Kevin didn't just theorize about this. He actually ran a pilot program in a school.
Stanton Middle School.
Yes. How did he put this tiny silo idea into practice with kids?
So he took this concept to students between the ages of 11 and 13 in the Red Clay School District. But to really grasp the impact of what happened there, we have to look at the severe educational barriers these kids were facing daily.
Yeah, the interview mentioned that some of the 8th graders in these classes were reading at a second or third grade level, right?
Yes, and on top of that, many of them were bilingual or multilingual. English wasn't their first language.
Wow.
So if you walk into that classroom and drop a traditional music theory textbook on the desk, or try to teach them standard notation on a whiteboard,
You've already lost them.
the friction is just way too high.
So how do you teach kids to build a modern music career when the traditional academic tools are completely inaccessible to them?
This is where artificial intelligence was deployed. And not just as a fun creative toy, but as a translation tool.
A translation tool, that's interesting.
The technology allowed Kevin to meet these kids exactly where they were. The AI could take complex musical concepts and explain them in the kids' own vernacular, in their preferred language, and adapt it entirely to their specific learning style.
That is incredible. So they were using AI to bypass the academic bottleneck entirely?
Completely bypassing it.
What did the actual creation process look like in that classroom?
It was incredibly comprehensive.
Yeah.
So they use generative AI to create the music itself, obviously, but they didn't stop there.
Of course not.
They used AI to generate their own unique artist avatars. They crafted entire backstories for these virtual musicians. They used AI for video generation to create visual content for their tracks.
Which is already a full production house.
Right, and perhaps the most revolutionary part was their use of something Kevin referred to as vibe coding.
Vibe coding. Okay, I saw that term in the transcript, and I have to geek out over this for a second. How does that actually work in practice for an 11-year-old?
It is essentially programming through natural language.
Okay.
Instead of needing to learn Python or HTML, these kids literally just spoke into the computer. They described what they wanted, the vibe they were going for, and the AI wrote the code to build it.
That is wild.
They used this process to build their own functional, Spotify-like media player and music platform called hostmusic.com.
11-year-olds built that.
Yes. And this tied into a broader artificial idol concept Kevin was teaching them, where they were creating and managing entirely virtual pop stars.
They built a functional streaming platform just by talking to a machine. That completely reshapes how we think about technical skills. I mean, it feels like a massive societal shift in terms of who gets to participate in the creative economy.
It is a staggering democratization of access.
Hmm?
In the interview, Kevin openly acknowledges his own privilege. He became a professional musician because he had a piano in his house and the free time to practice it for hours every day.
Which is a huge advantage.
Massive. Traditional music education is notoriously expensive. Private lessons are a luxury. For a kid whose parents have to choose between paying for piano lessons and paying the heating bill, the door to that world has historically been slammed shut.
You either had the resources to learn the craft or you were locked out.
Precisely. But now, access just requires natural language. You don't need thousands of dollars for instruments or studio time. You just need to be able to talk to the AI and articulate your vision.
It levels the playing field in a way we have never seen before.
It really does.
Yeah.
These students who were struggling with basic reading comprehension were suddenly able to express themselves with high-level production value. They created over 50 songs of real, emotional, intellectual property.
Which leads to one of the most surprising twists in the entire source material.
A roadblock.
Yes, these kids generate all this marketable art, they have this platform, but then they hit a massive, real-world roadblock.
The labor law paradox.
Explain this, because it sounds completely absurd at first glance. Kevin couldn't legally pay them for the music they made.
He could not. And the reason comes down to child labor laws.
Which is wild.
Now, these laws were originally designed, quite rightly, to keep small children out of dangerous factories, to prevent them from working in coal mines, and to ensure they were in school rather than being exploited.
Which everyone agrees is a good thing. We don't want kids in coal mines.
Of course, but those laws were written for the industrial age. They never anticipated a world where an 11-year-old could sit in a middle school classroom and, using their imagination and an AI prompt, generate highly valuable digital IP.
Right. The laws just can't comprehend it.
It highlights this massive grinding friction between our outdated institutions and the realities of modern digital creation. The legal framework simply does not know how to classify an 11-year-old digital creator.
So what happens to the music? And the money?
Well, Kevin is actually working alongside the Department of Education and the Department of Labor to figure out a solution to this, because these kids are creating real value and they deserve to be compensated for their work.
I have to admit, though, hearing that 11-year-olds generated 50 songs makes me a bit cynical, and I think a lot of people listening might have the same reaction.
The cheating question.
Yeah. Isn't this just the computer doing all the heavy lifting? Is it actually their art, or is it just cheating?
It is the inevitable question, and Kevin's methodology provides a very grounded answer to this. He didn't just sit the kids down, point to a screen, and tell them to push a button that says, make a song.
Okay, that's good to hear.
He actually taught them the foundational mechanics of songwriting.
So they weren't just typing, make a sad song and walking away.
Far from it. They learned standard pop structures. They had to understand what an intro, a verse, a pre-chorus, a chorus, a bridge, and a hook actually do in a song.
Oh, wow. So real music theory.
Yes. He even taught them rondo forms.
Rondo forms.
Yeah, that classical structure where a main theme keeps returning between contrasting sections. They had to understand the architecture of the music they were asking the AI to build.
So the AI is acting more like a session band playing the parts the kids are directing.
That is a great way to look at it. AI is simply a tool. It can be as involved or as hands-off as the user dictates. You could just ask a chatbot to write lyrics and paste them blindly into a generator.
Sure, anyone can do that.
But you can also use it to execute a highly specific, structured vision that you have carefully crafted.
What makes Kevin's perspective so compelling in the source material is that he isn't just this blind tech evangelist preaching about how perfect AI is.
Oh, definitely not.
He actually faced massive, painful ethical friction himself when dealing with these tools.
He had a very difficult time adopting the technology initially.
He did. Back in 2023, he worked on a corporate project for Upwork that involved building vocal clones and using AI in the production process.
And he hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shortly after, a tool came out called UIO, which is likely a reference to platforms like Udio, the AI music generator, and the transcript shows he was deeply uncomfortable with it. The idea of cloning human voices and generating instant audio just felt wrong to him.
That internal conflict is incredibly common among established creatives right now. You spend your whole life mastering a difficult technical skill, and suddenly a machine can mimic it in seconds.
So how did he get past that feeling of disenchantment? Because obviously he did.
He forced himself to confront it head-on. He spent an entire summer doing AI co-writes with his songwriting community.
An entire summer, just forcing it.
Yeah. He realized that ignoring the technology wouldn't make it go away. He had to force himself to get comfortable with it, to understand its limitations and its capabilities, and adapt to the new reality. He recognized the wave was coming and decided he had to learn to surf it rather than get crushed by it.
And the interview draws a brilliant parallel to help us understand this transition. It compares generative AI to the history of pitch correction software.
Tools like Auto-Tune and Melodyne. If we look at the trajectory of pitch correction, it tells us exactly where AI is headed.
Walk us through that, because I think a lot of people still view AI as this bizarre alien thing. How does Auto-Tune help us understand it?
Think back to the late 90s and early 2000s, when Cher released Believe, or when T-Pain first broke out and started dominating the charts.
Right.
The pitch correction they used was an obvious robotic gimmick. It was the entire hook of the song, and it was aggressively in your face.
I remember purists being absolutely furious about it. They said it was the death of real singing.
And yet look at the music industry today. That technology didn't go away. It matured. It became surgical and invisible.
You don't even notice it now.
Exactly. Virtually every pop vocal you hear today, whether it is Taylor Swift, Bruno Mars, or some indie folk singer, has some level of pitch correction applied to it. We just don't hear the robot voice anymore.
Right. The engineers use it to nudge a slightly flat note into perfect pitch without stripping away the human emotion.
So it went from a novelty to a standard piece of the infrastructure.
And generative AI is following that exact same trajectory.
Exactly. Right now, we are in the T-Pain era of AI. We might hear the clunky, obvious AI artifacts, the weird digital warbles, or the generic lyrics. But very soon, it will just be an invisible surgical tool integrated into everyone's workflow.
It'll just be how things are done.
Yeah. It'll be used to generate a bass line, to ideate a melody, or to clean up a mix, all behind the scenes.
But that brings up a really poignant observation from Kevin. When you democratize art by exposing the creation process, when anyone can generate a song or vibe code an app or perfectly tune a vocal, It takes away the mystery.
The magic is gone.
Yeah. Music has always enchanted people because it felt like magic. When the curtain is pulled back and the mystery is gone, some people feel deeply disenchanted.
It is a profound psychological reaction. Think about how you feel when the curtain is pulled back on the things you love. Does understanding the mechanics of a magic trick ruin the magic for you? Or does it make you appreciate the craft even more?
That's a great point.
We are entering an era where the mechanics of creation are visible and accessible to everyone. The enchantment can no longer rely entirely on technical wizardry.
So if the magic isn't in the technical creation anymore, and literally anyone can make a technically perfect song, where is the value? How do you actually make a living?
This takes us right back to the manifesto and the concept of the tiny silo.
Right.
Because if technical perfection is a commodity, the only thing left of value is the relationship with the audience. For Kevin, realizing this meant completely changing how he releases his music and runs his business.
The sources mention he essentially fled traditional streaming platforms like Spotify. He took his music to the underground space using a direct-to-consumer app called Untitled.
Yeah, Untitled with the bracket notation.
Right. I am not super familiar with that platform. Why walk away from the biggest music distributor in the world?
It comes down to a fundamental problem with how traditional streaming platforms handle data. Let's say you log into your Spotify for Artists dashboard, and it tells you that you have a listener in Lithuania who streamed your song 50 times.
Okay.
On paper, that looks like success. You have a global reach, the algorithm is working.
But you have no idea who that person is.
You don't even know if it is a person.
Oh, true.
That listener in Lithuania could just be an automated bot running on a server farm to gain the streaming numbers. And even if it is a real person, you cannot contact them.
You don't have their email address.
Exactly. You cannot sell them a t-shirt. You cannot let them know when you are playing a show in their area. It is a completely passive, anonymous, and ultimately useless metric for building a sustainable business.
So it is a vanity metric. It looks good on a chart, but it doesn't pay the rent. How does an app like Untitled actually solve that?
With direct-to-consumer tools like Untitled, the artist has total visibility and ownership of the data. Kevin explains that on this platform, he can see exactly who listened to a specific song, he knows how many times they listened to it, and exactly when they got bored and moved on to the next track.
That is incredibly granular data.
It is, and more importantly, it is a direct connection to a real human being.
Yeah.
You can communicate with them. You cannot build a silo of 1 million true fans or even 1,000 true fans using anonymous streams and bot traffic.
Right. A silo requires real, direct, measurable connections.
If your goal is to actually earn a living doing what you love, you have to bypass the vanity metrics of the Billboard charts and focus entirely on the people who actually want to engage with you.
So what does that actually look like for a working musician today? If they aren't touring arenas, how does the math work out?
The sources show us it is a mix of highly targeted, unglamorous, but very profitable income streams. It involves writing bespoke music for television and securing advertising sync placements.
Okay, so commercial work.
Yes. And it involves getting direct financial support from those true fans on direct apps like Untitled. And crucially, it involves playing real physical shows in local communities.
Like the residency Kevin took on. The transcript mentions he became the resident pianist at a state house called 1776 down in Lewis, Delaware.
That is the perfect example. Playing piano at a local steakhouse in Delaware is the absolute antithesis of winning a Grammy or charting on Billboard.
It really is.
It is hyper-local, it is hyper-niche, but it provides a reliable, real living. It allows him to connect with people face-to-face, build local following, and sustain his creative freedom without compromising his art for an algorithm.
It is the practical application of the tiny silo. You aren't broadcasting to the whole world. You are building a specific community, piece by piece, fan by fan.
And that model is available to anyone in any industry.
It really is a complete reframing of what it means to be successful. We have covered so much ground today, from the shifting goals of the next generation to the realities of AI in the classroom. Let's pull all these threads together.
The core takeaway from all of these sources is that success is no longer defined by monolithic institutions. The gates have been torn down.
Through the power of AI and digital tools, the barriers to creation and distribution are falling at an unprecedented rate. This is allowing anyone from an 11-year-old middle schooler who is struggling with basic reading comprehension to a seasoned professional musician wrestling with new technology to bypass the traditional gatekeepers entirely.
You do not need the industry's permission to create.
And you do not need their charts to validate your success. You just need to build a deep, direct, localized community.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to mull over as you go about your day.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have seen how AI is rapidly democratizing the technical skills of art. But if AI eventually perfectly replicates the technical craft of music, the invisible pitch correction, the perfect standard pop song structures, the flawless instrumentation, and even the coding of the distribution platforms themselves, does that mean the true, lasting value of human art will shift entirely? Perhaps the value of art will move completely away from technical perfection and instead become entirely about the vulnerability, the authenticity, and the shared human connection of that tiny silo you have built.
That is a profound thought, and exactly the kind of shift we all need to be preparing for, regardless of what field we work in. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the death of the Billboard Charts manifesto. Keep questioning those inherited goals, keep learning, and start looking for your own silo. We will catch you next time.